Star Wars is I think most people I know would be like a fan of Star Wars. Like, the original trilogy is like a very beloved trilogy. It has some of the most iconic characters in film, and it has the most iconic soundtrack in a film series. And then, a couple years down the line, they got George Lucas to make a couple of more, and he was pretty into that idea, and they were bad. I don't think we really need to talk about how and why the prequels are bad, because that has been covered since like the day they came out. So if you don't know why they're bad, then you might like them, which is actually pretty admirable to like these films, because they suck. It's just a mess. It's just a complete mess, and it's hard to sit through them all. It's not really something that you would do unless you were like going in a die-hard Star Wars marathon, um, which I have done with the prequels, and it's not the fun part. You watch A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and then you watch the three prequels, and then that ties you into Return of the Jedi, because then you've kind of I sound like such a freaking nerd right now telling you this. Disney bought Lucasfilm. That was a pretty big deal. I remember that. I was in school at the time, and all my friends were like, they're gonna make the worst Star Wars movie. It's gonna be Disney. And then we realized, like they're a big corporation, and they're not gonna want to like make it a Disney film. But I think we were kind of right. Now that the sequel trilogy is over, it was interesting. It was interesting at the beginning, and then it quickly became not interesting once everyone realized they don't know what they're doing. J.J. Abrams, who, he's not my favorite director, but he's a really good director. He's a very talented director, and there's a reason he's one of the highest paid directors in the world. He makes good film, and he makes an entertaining film. And so he and Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, I believe, but not Return of the Jedi, or wrote it alongside George Lucas, wrote it alongside J.J. Abrams, and made The Force Awakens, which was, it was a fun film. Force Awakens, yes, it was very similar to A New Hope, um, but it was so much better than the prequels. They did all that shit to like really let people know, like, look, we're not gonna fuck it up, guys. We're not gonna screw this around. All right, we're gonna give you what you want. We're gonna give you a rehash of the original trilogy, which is fine to start with. So the Force Awakens vision was just sort of like rebirth of Star Wars in a very familiar Star Wars, to then a very unfamiliar, sort of sarcastic, ironic Star Wars. It's kind of like almost shitting on the first one in a way, and I kind of enjoyed that, but I can understand why a lot of people didn't. And so they got J.J. Abrams back. So now it was his vision of Star Wars, but he's like, I'm gonna let them take the helm and do it the way they want to do it. And then Rian Johnson comes on for the middle one, takes it in a whole new direction. J.J. Abrams says he liked it, but it's not what he would have done. And then they get him back for the last one. So we basically have a weird trilogy where the middle film is just a completely different vision, and the beginning and end are like the vision. It's a critical film to have done by a different person, but they did it that way. And obviously they didn't intend to have the last film be made by J.J. Abrams, but that's how it turned out. And the last film is I really went in like with an open mind, being like, you know what, I think I'm gonna like it because I like the Last Jedi. Blah, blah, blah. Like, as long as it entertains me, as long as it's just a decent Star Wars film, like, I'll like it. Um, and so what we got was The Rise of Skywalker, which has some of the worst dialogue, maybe one of the worst plots. The Rise of Skywalker really tried to correct everything that was wrong with the sequel trilogy, while also trying to tie up every Star Wars film we've had so far. And I don't blame J.J. Abrams for not making it perfect, because he couldn't have. But like, this was bad. This was really bad. I can only imagine it was a million producers that had their say, because I just cannot imagine J.J. Abrams watching the final cut of this film and being like, yeah, this is it. This is the one. This is the film that I'm going to finish the Star Wars franchise with. I have a scene from The Rise of Skywalker that I have to watch with you, because it is the definition of what's wrong with this film. And I could hear one or two people, it was a packed cinema, I could hear one or two people like giggling behind me, and I was like, it was the one, because I hate when people talk in a theater or anything like that. It was like the one time where I was like, yeah, I get that.
We've decoded the intel from the First Order spy, and it confirms the worst. Somehow Palpatine returned.
Wait, do we believe this?
It cannot be. The Emperor is dead.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
I'm sure there's like extended universe, right, that talks about cloning, or I know that in Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine talks about Plagueis, and he's like, oh, he could bring people back from the death. He could bring people back to life. Don't know why that was hard to say. Talking about cloning and all this shit, like, that's a big thing to just bring in. Like, you couldn't have just thought about like a different villain for this film, or like maybe talk to Ryan about what he saw happening in the next one and maybe like worked it out. But just cloning, my favorite lines are still coming, so.
He's been planning his revenge. His followers have been building something for years. The largest fleet the galaxy's ever known. He calls it the Final Order. In 16 hours, attacks on all free worlds begin. The Emperor and his fleet have been hiding in the unknown regions on a world called Exegol.
Exegol does not appear on any star chart, but legend describes it as the hidden world of the Sith.
There's a little thing called show don't tell, which is basically where you'd want to actually physically show things that are important to the story rather than having characters just say it. So for example, if I was sad, you'd rather me sort of sit here like, instead of saying I'm sad, it's more compelling to have more things be up to the imagination of the audience. And so basically what just happened here was Poe Dameron, played by Oscar Isaac, who I adore. I think he's amazing. I think he's fantastic. I think he's doing the best he can do here. I'm not trying, this isn't a diss at anyone in the film. I think they did a fine job on a acting job and a visual job, whatever. It's all fine. It's just it's this writing. He's just saying Emperor Palpatine is back. You remember the bad guy from the other two trilogies who hasn't been mentioned at all in these films so far and who has no relevancy in this trilogy until now. He has followers, news to me. They've been building a secret weapon war machine. It's a bunch, they don't really say it, but it's a bunch of Star Destroyers, and it's called the Final Order. And by the way, here's the address: 101 Exegol Lane, a galaxy in a couple of miles away. Even though the plot is very silly, you could still have this plot and just don't have that scene in there. I get that it's a big blockbuster Disney action film. That's Star Wars, and every person on the planet's gonna see it, and you want it to be pretty easy to follow. But God, like, you are putting in so much money into this. Can you not just make it just a bit more compelling, you know, for the viewer? Just like, maybe they stumble upon him in a different way. Maybe they're going after something and it's like a red herring and it's Palpatine pulling the strings, as opposed to being like, Exegol, he's here and he's got this and he's got this. There's still more.
There were always whispers. His whole entity dead.
So Palpatine's been out there all this time, pulling the strings.
Always.
That's the point in the cinema where I was like, really? You can actually see Oscar Isaac's face being like, he probably either knows this is like not great writing, or maybe he thinks that this is going to be like an alternative take of the film that like they're not going to keep in. So he's just like, Emperor Palpatine's been out there this whole time,
Pulling the strings.
He's just not giving it his all, which is like totally fair. I don't think I could reasonably give my all for this either.
I know how to get to Exegol.
Tell me.
Luke searched for it for a long time. He nearly found it. There are ciphers here I can't read. But he said to get there, you need one of these. A Sith Wayfinder. They're compasses that lead the way to Exegol. To stop what we both know is coming.
Trying to tie Luke into this, like, Luke was looking for Exegol. Just never mentioned it. It's never been talked about. Never, he didn't even say it in the last film. And another thing, another like little gadget, Sith Wayfinder. You're just introducing another thing in this 2-minute scene. You've introduced the fact that Palpatine's back. I know they show him, but you've just reiterated that he's back, that he's got an army and followers, and that... What else? There was like a shit ton in this, and I'm forgetting it now. I look like an idiot. That he's a clone. Sorry, what? I know there's a Sith Wayfinder, and Luke knew about this, and it's like, oh my god.
I need to finish what Luke started. Find Exegol. Find the Emperor.
No.
I don't want to go without your blessing, but I will. I will. It's what you would do.
Another thing, and it's clear in this scene, like it is in every scene she's in, but it's so clear that they're rehashing footage of Carrie Fisher in previous films. It's so clear, and it really pissed me off because I remember the entire press before this, all the questions were like, so, unfortunately, Carrie Fisher passed away. Also, R.I.P. Miss you, Carrie. You had the chance to kill her off in the last film, and it could have been pretty impactful, but no, you had to add the yeah, but it's so clear that they're reusing footage, man. It's so clear. She doesn't say a single useful thing in the film. All her lines are like, no, trust in the Force. The color grading on her or something, or just like the lighting on her just looks slightly different. And I know it's because it's a different environment they have to put her in, but like, my gosh, you can literally de-age a human being perfectly in the Marvel films. Like, how can you not add this person in with maybe a bit of CG or whatnot? I don't know. It just makes me more sad. It just reminds me even more that Carrie Fisher isn't alive. So there's that. And it's such a shame. You know, the sequel trilogy had the potential to be something really good. What would have happened if they had actually got George Lucas back to write the sequel trilogy? Give it to these other really talented directors and let them like edit it down. Let them cherry pick the really good ideas in there and tie them together like the good director they are. While I think he squandered his opportunity with the prequels, so much so that we all have, you know, a bit of resentment for him. But it's his baby at the end of the day. It's his thing. This sequel trilogy just isn't it. And that's unfortunate that it ended up being that way. And if you enjoyed it, which I can understand, enjoying it more so than the prequels, I think this is a lot more fun. And I came out of The Rise of Skywalker at least feeling like there was a shit ton of fan service in there that I got something out of. I just can't help but wonder about what could have been. You know, what could have been if we had a good old Georgie boy back. Famous writer of, what was that? That like World War II film he made? Red Tails, yeah. Who remembers Red Tails? Comment below if you watch Red Tails and let me know what you think, because you know, I have a lot of time to watch movies these days, so it's enough Star Wars talk. Maybe forever. Like and subscribe. God, that's just, or don't. Come back, search my name each time and watch the videos. Whatever. Bye.
I can't read.